I would like to just recapitulate what the 10 tremendous rules of cross-examination are. 1. Think commando. 2. When you have got what you want for the closing arguments, stop, stop, and stop. Third is never ask a question for which you do not know the answer. 4. Always ask leading questions. 5. Never ever ask the witness to explain or never ask the question why. 6. Reserve your comment for the judge and never ever for the witness. 7. Never ask the witness for help. 8. Ask only one thing at a time and not more than that. 9. When putting your case, tell the witness that he disagrees with you. 10. Remember the bounds for confrontation. So these are the 10 rules for cross-examination. Now, coming to the next step in cross-examination, after you have done all these things, there is a concept called lever. Lever, when you are considering the 10th rule, bounds, look for the lever. Lever na enna? It is the notionally what drops the witness through the evidential trapdoor. That is where you can pull the rug under the feet of the witness. அதாவது எப்படி அவனை வந்து கவுக்க போறீங்க, எப்படி வந்து அவனை வந்து கான்ஃபரண்ட் பண்ணி எப்படி how are you going to prove the credibility of the witness is what is called the lever. இதுல வந்து you have to be very very careful because you can only seasoned advocates who have done the trial and cross examination can adopt this procedure, and it can go against you also. So you have to understand that pulling the lever it can be both. It is a double edged weapon. உங்களுக்கு சாதகமாகவும் இருக்கும், உங்களுக்கு எதிராகவும் இருக்கும். For example, I am going to tell you an illustration. இப்போ நீங்க every witness நீங்க வராங்கன்னு வெச்சுக்கோங்க, you cannot ask this, you cannot adopt this tactics called pulling the lever with every witness. இப்போ வந்து ஒரு எக்ஸாம்பிள் சொல்றேன். A mother is giving an evidence for a wrong committed by the son. சரிங்களா? இது வந்து the character of the son பத்தி பேச போறது. ஒரு மதர் சொல்றாங்க இத. And இப்போ வந்து நீங்க pulling the leverங்கறத எப்படி நீங்க யூஸ் பண்ண போறீங்க? See, இதுல வந்து என்னன்னா ஒரு most important thing is when a mother is talking about her son, you have to be very careful because the judge will also know the role of the mother in the life of the son. So when you are asking certain questions, you can say no, you cannot ask a question that you are outrightly lying, or you cannot say that what you are saying is wrong, because it is a mother who is giving the evidence for the son. So she will give only the good things about the son and nothing bad. You might carefully make the comment later, but the mom may not deserve to be witheringly confronted in the witness box for showing loyalty. Abdina, you cannot counter the mother for showing loyalty towards her son. That's a natural feeling. So a judge, if you are going to ask certain questions which is going to malign the character of the son, even the judge may not like it. He may not openly disagree with you, but he will never like you to ask certain questions to the mother regarding the character of the son. அது மாதிரி தான். So what you have to do is you can only make certain questions which may be disregarded from her testimony. So you have to be very careful when you have to pull the lever. இப்போ நீங்க வந்து இது மாதிரி a mother will not permit her son or give evidence against her son so that he will go to jail. அந்த மாதிரி எந்த மதரும் சொல்ல மாட்டாங்க பேசிக்காவே. So அதனால when you are asking certain questions regarding the character evidence of the son, you are trying to invite certain disasters. So certain questions need not be asked regarding the character of the son as far as when you are questioning the cross examining the mother. So அது வந்து first point, that is called the lever அப்படினு சொல்லுவாங்க, pulling the lever அப்படிம்பாங்க. The next thing you have to understand is a very important concept is the lever should create an embarrassment. It's only used to create an embarrassment, but it should not, it helps us to get the thinking is like this. இப்போ வந்து இப்போ லீவரை புல் பண்றோம்னா two things are eminent. One is, if I pull this, does the witness get written off அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு கேள்வி வரும். Next is, if I pull this lever, does the testimony unravel அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு கேள்வி வரும். இது ரெண்டும் வந்து these are the two aspects which you have to keep in mind when you are using this system of leveraging னு சொல்லுவாங்க. So what you should do is, it should not deprive the testimony of the witness. It can cause an embarrassment to the witness, but it should not deprive the testimony of the witness, because it is a testimony which determines the result when you are arguing the case. இப்போ சில விஷயங்கள்ல வந்து it is sometimes you have to leave certain things open for argument. You cannot ask each and every, as I said, only one thing at a time, and don't ask too many questions, too many lengthy questions. So you have to remember that rule when you are using this technique of pulling the lever. The other way, there is another way to think of the lever. இப்போ வந்து இப்போ எங்க சீனியர் ஒருத்தர் சொல்லுவார், அவர் used to always say, you are using the lever like a fishing rod மாதிரி. The fishing line இருக்கு பாத்தீங்களா, மீன் பிடிக்கிறது, அது மாதிரி அது. You are only trying to get as much information as possible from the witness. It is called the fishing line. The other name for leveraging is called fishing line. That means you are allowing the line to go into the water and waiting for the bait, or waiting for the fish to take the bait. இதுதான் வந்து leveraging. So இந்த fish வந்து எவ்வளவு தூரம், அதாவது எவிடன்ஸ் வந்து எவ்வளவு கிட்டக்க வருதோ உங்க லைனுக்கு, that is the leveraging line, the more you are able to build on your arguments. So this is called the bait, the fishing bait. So this is one of the terminologies used regarding the thinking lever. So இது வந்து you cannot, I can only teach you how to go about the gathering of the evidence. இப்போ ஒரு மியூசிக் சொல்லும்போது அது இசை என்னங்கிறத வந்து நம்ம சொல்லலாம், பட் அதை உணர்றதுங்கிறது நீங்க அதை வந்து உள்ள போய் அந்த இசையோட உள்ள போய் கேட்டாதான் அந்த இசையோடைய ஒரு டெப்த் உங்களுக்கு தெரியும். Similarly, when you are using this technique, you can only go as much deep as you think or you feel to get more out of the witness. This is called the leveraging. This is very important in the concept of cross examination. The next point is one of the frequent points of leveraging is previous inconsistent statement. அப்ப முதல்ல என்ன சொல்றான், இப்போ என்ன சொல்றான்? This is the most important thing. What is he said previously? What is he saying now? So இப்போ வந்து ஒரு witness வந்து என்ன பண்றான், he said something in evidence which can be contradicted by referring to what was accurately recorded as having been said by him previously. இப்போ வந்து ஒரு ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட் முன்னாடி சொல்றான் அவன், or maybe he made a statement in his affidavit, proof affidavit, and now he is making a statement which is quite inconsistent with what he has said. Then you can pull the lever to trap him. This is one of the methodologies. You have to be very careful in following this, because you should not put questions by which he can overcome the evidence which he has given previously. See, you should always view a witness as a person who is confronting you. He is always there to attack you wherever you go wrong. So it means that you have to be very careful in putting the questions. இப்போ ஒரு சின்ன எக்ஸாம்பிள் நான் கொடுக்குறேன் உங்களுக்கு. இப்போ நீங்க ஃபர்ஸ்ட் வந்து your question is, as I said, இப்போ இந்த கேள்வி கேளுங்க. Is it right that you said in your evidence that the cat sat on the mat? அப்படிங்கறத நீங்க கேட்டிருக்கீங்க. அந்த இந்த லாஸ்ட் இல்லஸ்ட்ரேஷன்ல நான் சொல்லியிருந்தேன். இப்போ நாங்க இன்னொன்னு வந்து நீங்க என்ன கேட்கலாம்னா, are you clear in your recollection that what you said is correct? This is another way of putting the leveraging question. நீங்க முதல்ல என்ன கேட்டீங்க? Whether the cat sat on the mat. Now you are going to reconfirm what he said is right or wrong. And அதுக்கு தான் இந்த கேள்வி கேட்குறீங்க. Can you recollect that you said this in your previous statement? Is it correct? So the witness will have to either confirm or he has to, and therefore he has to confirm saying that he said that, because it is recorded, already recorded. And you should ensure, இப்போ என்ன இதுல முக்கியம்னா, that recollection and reconfirmation of the previous statement has to be recorded by the court. Merely asking a question is one thing, merely answering is another thing, but the entire answers has to be entered in the court record. அதை வந்து நம்ம வந்து always you have to make it very clear. ஏன்னா அந்த ரெக்கார்ட் பண்ண அப்புறம் தான் you can take it out for pursuing your arguments. So this is the basis of levering. It's called the levering. Now the next concept என்னன்னா, you should ensure that the witness does not maneuver with the earlier statements he has made. அதை மழுப்புறது, இல்ல அதை தாண்டி வர பார்க்கறது, இல்ல அதை வந்து வேற மாதிரி வந்து டைல்யூட் தட் ஸ்ட்ரெங்க் ஆஃப் தட் டெஸ்டிமனி, அது மாதிரி பண்றதுக்கு வாய்ப்புகள் நிறைய இருக்கு இந்த கிராஸ் எக்ஸாமினேஷன். அந்த சமயத்துல தான் we have to adopt a technique called ring fencing. ring fencing னா சுத்தி வளைக்கிறது. How do you tie up a witness to ensure that he does not go out of your control? It's called ring fencing. The ring fencing technique was used by the barristers of yesteryears. இப்போ முந்திலாம் செஷன்ஸ் கோர்ட் இருக்கும், முந்திலாம் வந்து அந்த ட்ரையல் ஜட்ஜஸ்லாம் என்ன பண்ணுவாங்க, அந்த barristersலாம் they use this technique called ring fencing. That helps them to ensure that the witness does not wriggle out of the evidence or the testimony which has already given earlier or dilute. இப்போ இது வந்து எதுக்காக நம்ம இந்த ring fencing technique யூஸ் பண்றோம்னா, it helps us to summarize or to sum up our arguments before the judge. இப்போ இந்த வந்து அவனை டைட்டன் பண்ணி வைக்கிறோம், இதுக்கு மேல அவன் இப்படி இப்படி நகர முடியாது. he has to be under the mesh. அந்த கயித்துக்குள்ள கட்டி வைக்கிறோம் அவரை. அதுக்கப்புறம் அவன் போகாத மாதிரி பார்த்துக்கிறதுக்கு தான் we use this technique called ring fencing. இதுல என்னன்னா, the most important aspect of this is, இப்போ இந்த இப்ப நான் அந்த கேள்வி கேட்டாலே the cat was in the mat அப்படிங்கிற அந்த ஒரு சின்ன ஒரு I just gave a specimen example. இப்போ இதையே இப்போ நீங்க வந்து இன்னும் எலாபரேட் பண்றீங்க, you are asking a little more technical things about technical details about the cat. அப்போ நீங்க என்ன கேக்குறீங்க, அந்த நீங்க சொன்ன கேட் வந்து அந்த black cat இல்ல some other cat அப்படிங்கிறது ஒரு கேள்வி. அது you are now trying to ring fencing. அது எப்ப பாத்தீங்க, மண்டே பாத்தீங்களா, டியூஸ்டே பாத்தீங்களா, வாட் இஸ் த டேட் ஆர் வாட் இஸ் த டே. மூணாவது வந்து இடம், அது எங்க இருந்தது, வெதர் இட் வாஸ் இன் தி ஃப்ரண்ட் ரூம் ஆர் இட் வாஸ் இன் தி டைனிங் ரூம். நாலாவது அந்த கேட் உடைய எந்த நேரத்துல பாத்தீங்க. So this is one of the techniques you are going to adopt for ring fencing. That is, நீங்க பாத்தீங்கன்னா you are slowly building up the tempo of the case so that you are ensuring that the witness does not escape from your control. இதான் அந்த controlling சொன்ன பாத்தீங்களா, that is the main thing. அதுதான் வந்து you have to ensure that he doesn't go out of control. இப்போ என்ன பண்றீங்க, இந்த மாதிரி கேள்விகள் கேட்கும்போது you are giving the witness a long rope to give you are giving a long rope around his neck, so that the questions which you are asking are going to really trap him into a ஒரு ஜெயில் ஒரு கூண்டுல போடுற மாதிரி நீங்க வைக்கிறீங்க. That is the most important thing. So the witness in the கேள்விகள்லாம் கேட்கும்போது he is normally dug up into the case. He is already given the answers and he is dug up into his case. So there is no so there is no way he could go out of the answers hereafter. So whatever he has to answer, it should be within the scope of these questions. இதுக்கு மேல அவர் சொல்ல முடியாது. In the ring fence, if in the confirmation vara you are tightening the noose around his neck. So he is perfectly poised for enabled you to pull the lever to be dropped out of the case. So in the ring fencing kulla kondanditingana, you can pull the lever to ensure that he drops out of the case, or the credibility of the witness is lost. Then what you do is you are going to summon the documents, the pleadings, the documents he has filed in his defense, and the original documents is very important. That's why if you city civil court la paakumbodhu the original documents pathi kepanga. Why? Because that shows the real character of the person, the real character of the document, and you are going to ask questions based on the authenticity. இதோடைய உண்மையான credibility or இதோட உண்மையான ஒரு நேச்சர் என்னங்கிறதுக்கு you are summoning the original document. It may be plaintiff இருந்தீங்கன்னா recovery of suit இருந்ததுன்னா invoices copies, delivery challans, அந்த மாதிரி சில இது இருக்கும். Property இருந்ததுன்னா you have to get the encumbrance certificate, the original property documents, and the patta, chitta, adangal. There's so many other documents which go for in a suit for immovable property. Then you show the original document and say whether this document is authentic or not, or is it true or not in the document நீங்க ஃபைல் பண்ணிருக்கீங்க. Drawing his attention to the signature, அது என்ன signature உங்களோட தானா, and the feature of reliability, இது வந்து உங்களுடைய கையெழுத்தா இல்ல இது உங்களுடைய contents are true or not அப்படிங்கிற கேள்விகளை நீங்க கேட்பீங்க. And at the same time you should also maintain pressure on your questioning to stop him reading it again and again. நீங்க வந்து ரொம்ப டீடைல்டா அவனை கேட்க ஆரம்பிச்சாலும் he will start thinking twice. So you have to show the document only on to ensure that whether his signature is right and any other feature which he thinks is reliable on it. So these are the normal things he has to tell the court regarding the authenticity of the document. But the other aspect which many people may ignore is நீங்க வெரிஃபிகேஷன் ஒன்று போடுறீங்க. இந்த எல்லா கேசஸ்லயுமே ரிட்டர்ன் ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட்டா இருந்தாலும் சரி, பிளெயின்ட்டா இருந்தாலும் சரி, யூ ரைட் அ டிக்ளரேஷன். என்ன சொல்றீங்க வெரிஃபிகேஷன்ல? A formal statement that what is stated in the above paras so and so are true to the best of my knowledge, information and belief ன்னு போடுறீங்க. இதோடைய வேல்யூ என்னங்கிறது உங்களுக்கு தெரியணும் ஃபர்ஸ்ட். Because not many people know the value of this verification. மெக்கானிக்கலா அதுல யாருமே கேள்வியே கேட்கறது இல்லை. இதுல என்னன்னா என்ன சொல்றீங்கன்னா, here is the document, it is your statement which you know to be important matter first. Then please note that the signature appears under the declaration of the truth of this statement. இதை நீங்க வந்து கையெழுத்து போட்டது உண்மையா, இதுல நீங்க சொல்றதெல்லாம் உண்மையா அப்படிங்கறத ஃபர்ஸ்ட் நீங்க கேட்கணும். அது கேட்ட பிறகு then read out the declaration of truth slowly. இதை நீங்க என்ன சொல்றீங்க, it is true to the best of my knowledge, information and belief ன்னு சொல்றது கரெக்டா அப்படின்னு கேளுங்க. கண்டிப்பா கரெக்ட்னு தான் சொல்ல முடியும், வேற ஒன்றும் சொல்ல முடியாது. Then you have to now tighten the rope around him again. ஏன்னா அப்ப நீங்க என்ன சொல்வீங்க, whether the contents of the statements are true or notங்கிறத கேட்பீங்க. He has to say it is true. Now we have understood the significance of the verification or the declaration which you make in your written statement or plaint. இதுல தான் நீங்க இனிமேல் நீங்க focus on these issues. இதுல என்ன நீங்க கேட்க போறீங்கன்னா, whether there are any inconsistencies in what he has said and what is there in the document. So now you have to go for the inconsistencies. The next aspect of the cross examination is go for the inconsistencies. You take the witness to the inconsistency, precisely, crisply pinpointing the relevant section which contradicts his testimony, and read it out to the witness. Don't ask the witness to read out. You should not allow the witness to read, because he may not read the section you want him to do, or he may try to escape from reading that, or read the wrong sentences, so that you have to read that what he has said was inconsistent. Illana, you will start slipping away from your control. So another thing is, he may quote the wrong section and will read only that which embarrasses your case. So please ensure that when you are reading the testimony or going through the document, it is for you to read it, and don't allow the witness to read the sentences. If, for example, you have to say, see on page 3 in the second paragraph on the third line, we see a sentence which starts with, I was in the front room. இது உங்களுக்கு தெரியுதா? Do you have it? அப்படிங்கிற கேள்வியை நீங்க கேட்கலாம். Because this is, I'm just giving you some specific examples. Then you have to pause for a little, and then you have to ask the next question. Please correct me if I read this incorrectly. Your statement reads as follows. I was in the living room on Monday morning. I have a cat. It is a black cat, which the cat likes to sit on the mat in the living room only that morning. The cat was nowhere to be found. Pause. Then you look at the judge. Then you have to pull the lever. In the evidence, you say that the cat sat on the mat. In the statement you signed as true and which you have verified, you say the cat was not around. You are not reliable, are you? இதான் கேள்வி. You are not reliable, are you? இதான் கேள்வி. Then the next is, you drive an unanswerable rhetorical wedge between the answers. எப்படின்னா, this is a pure bounce. இதான் rule number 10. It won't much matter what the witness says, because you have already got what you wanted. It is the moment of accusation. You are accusing the witness that you are not reliable. This is how it goes. Then once you follow this, it becomes unanswerable for him, and you are wrapping him around under the concept of ring fencing. This is a very critical feature of effective cross-examination. Now, we are now going to the key concepts to using a previous inconsistent statements. How are you going to use that? 1, confirm the evidence in chief. Then ring fence it so there is no weaseling out of what was said later. முதல்ல you find out, confirm evidence அவன் என்ன சொல்லிருக்கான் chiefல. Then ring fencing it to what I have explained to you before. என்ன செய்யலாம் அப்படிங்கிறது ring fencing. அவனை சுத்துறது. Next, you time up. Next, produce the original, the document, the original document or the testimony, evidence. Confirm its authenticity. Refer to the declaration of truth. And ring fence him further, this time into why the statement is true. Seringla, these are the points. Now go crisply to the inconsistency, reading it out, and then accuse. This is what are the I'm just summarizing all these things. Taking the first letters of the keywords, confirm, ring fence, original authenticity, declaration, why, go, and accuse, we have crod vaga, that is the code word. CROADWGA, and we can create a mnemonic sentence, carefully ring fence or a dodgy witness gets away. This is the essence of this technique. And once you are following this, the absolutely critical feature is in the 2 stages of ring fencing. One is ring fence the evidence as accurate. First, ring fence the statement as reliable. Next, இது ரெண்டும் வந்து you have to ensure that the key features are followed. So once we summarize this, we have to remember the adage which I have said earlier. Don't cross-examine unless you really have to. But if you want to do it, ensure that the 10 rules of cross-examination are followed. Next, look for the lever, but only use it for the right witness. That is very, very important. The right witness whom you feel is a vulnerable witness in your estimation. So then you have to follow carefully ring fence or a dodgy witness gets away. So this is the essence of cross-examination. Now, having come to these rules, I have a few theoretical things which I would like to highlight in this session. இதுல வந்து first வந்து kindly make a note of this citation. Madam கேக்குறதா?
Yes, sir.
கேக்குறதா? Kindly make a note of this citations. State of Kerala versus Rashid, 2018 SCC online, page 2251. The essence of this is, they said the factors guiding the exercise of discretion by judges and the practice guidelines to be followed by trial courts while conducting criminal trials. இதுல வந்து trial நடத்தும் போது what are the guidelines? இது வந்து this pertains to section 231(2) of the CRPC. இதுல வந்து இந்த evidence எடுக்கும் போது the factors that must be kept in consideration while taking evidence or while doing the cross examination. 1, possibility of undue influence on or threats to witness. The first parameters you have to take into account. 2, possibility that non-deferral would enable subsequent witness giving evidence on similar facts to tailor their testimony to circumvent the defense strategy. Very important. These are the rules laid down by the Supreme Court while conducting the cross-examination. 3, the 3, possibility of loss of memory of witness. இதெல்லாம் நீங்க consider பண்ணணும் at the time of taking the evidence. Then occurrence of delay in trial. So how long or how fast can you conduct or close the cross-examination, which is very essential, or the evidence in toto. The court further stated practice guidelines to be followed by trial courts in criminal trial, which includes a detailed case calendar must be prepared at the commencement of the trial that specifies dates on which examination in chief and cross will be conducted. Testimony of witness deposing on the same subject matter must be proximately scheduled. Request for deferral must be preferably made before preparation of calendar. 4, the grant of request to be promised on sufficient reasons and date of cross-examination after deferral to be specified. E, case calendar to be followed strictly and witnesses to be safeguarded. இதெல்லாம் வந்து basis on which a trial has to be conducted. More so when it's a sensitive case இருக்கும்போது you have to be very clear about the scheduling of the evidence. Very important. 2018 SCC online 2251 SC. Supreme Court, Sanjay, State of Kerala versus Rashid. Kindly make a note. So this is one of the cases which acts as a guideline for conducting the trial. Next, another case of the Bombay High Court, which has emphasized that in specific cases, the cross-examination can't be restricted to the contents of the chief examination. The court included that it might go past the examination in chief as the motivation behind the interrogation is to test the veracity or impeach the credit of the witness. So the conduct of cross-examination need not be strictly adhered to the examination in chief. Yenna, this has to be this you have to test the veracity or the impeach the credit of the witness. Sanjay versus State of Maharashtra. Criminal writ petition 1764 of 2019. This is the next case law which gives us the methodology of cross examination. If you read the judgment, you will definitely understand the significance of cross examination. So these are the two decisions I am going to quote now. Before I go into the next chapter on cross examination, that is the cross examination and the role of courts. It's a very important subject. I'm going to start something on that, but before that I want to ஒரு கேஸை பத்தி நான் பேச போறேன், which is reported in 1914 ILR 41 Calcutta 1072. It is called Emperor versus Nirmal Kanta Roy. A very very important judgment. ஏன்னா இதுல வந்து ஒரே கேஸ்ல வந்து ரெண்டு ட்ரையல் நடந்திருக்கு. ஒரே கேஸ்ல ரெண்டு ட்ரையல் எப்படி நடக்க முடியும்? ஒரே கேஸ்ல ரெண்டு ட்ரையல் அப்படிங்கறத எவ்ரிபடி வேர் ஆஸ்கிங். அதை வந்து ஐ வாண்ட் டு ஹைலைட் திஸ் கேஸ் ஒன்லி ஆன் தி கொஸ்டின் தட் அது மூணாவது ட்ரையல் போறதுக்குள்ள ப்ராசிக்யூஷனே வந்து நாங்க வந்து we are not going to pursue this case ன்னு சொல்லி வாபஸ் வாங்கிடுறாங்க. ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி வாபஸ் வாங்கும்போது does it amount to a discharge or an acquittal அப்படிங்கிற கேள்வி வந்தது ஜட்ஜி கிட்ட. Now I am going to read the case. I mean I am going to explain the case. In the case la enna what happened was ஒரு இன்ஸ்பெக்டர், இது வந்து ஒரு வெரி லேண்ட்மார்க் கேஸ். இது the trial of Nirmal Kanta Roy. It's a very important case which is also very different from the normal cases. இந்த கேஸ்ல என்ன ஆச்சுன்னா, one inspector Ripendranath Ghosh, while he was getting down from the bus in Calcutta, tram car, in a crowded thoroughfare in Calcutta, அதாவது அவ்வளவு crowdல எல்லாரும் பார்த்துட்டு இருக்காங்க. அவர் இறங்கின போது ஒரு assassin shot him dead. ஓகே, அந்த அசாசினை வந்து தேடிட்டு எல்லாம் ஓடிட்டு இருக்காங்க. அவன் ஷூட் பண்ணிட்டு போயிடுறான். he dies. Then after that when அவன் ஓடும்போது அவனை துரத்திக்கிட்டு 4 பேர் வராங்க. அந்த 4 பேர் வரும்போது அவன் திருப்பி when he turns around and shoots, அப்போ வந்து ஒரு யங்ஸ்டர் இறந்துடுறான். அனந்தா தெல்லின்னு ஒருத்தன் இறந்துடுறான். ஸோ 2 murders, the 2 murders in the same by the same person, and the accused caught a young Bengali. அந்த accused வந்து ஒரு யங் பெங்காலின்னு சொல்லி போலீஸ் பிடிக்கிறாங்க. அவன் தான் பண்ணியிருக்கான்னு சொல்லி. அவன் பேர் தான் வந்து நிர்மல் காந்த ராய். இட்ஸ் a very famous case. அவனை வந்து அரெஸ்ட் பண்ணி கொண்டு போறாங்க. He was produced in the Calcutta High Court for murder of the Inspector Ghosh and Ananta. And there are also other alternate charges of abetment of murder of Ghosh, culpable homicide not amounting to murder of Ananta. இது மாதிரி ஒரு பல சார்ஜஸ் வந்து எடுத்துட்டு போறாங்க. That is, they are charged under section 5 counts. There are 5 counts he was charged under. The first, the murder of Nipendranath Ghosh, who is inspector, under sections 302 and 34 of the Indian Penal Code. Secondly, murder of the same man under section 114 and 302 of the code. Thirdly, abetting the murder of the same man under sections 109, 302 of the code. Fourthly, the murder of Ananta Telli. Fifth, culpable homicide of Ananta Telli. So இப்போ வந்து 5 countsல வந்து அவர் அரெஸ்ட் பண்ணிருக்காங்க. And to all these counts he says he pleads not guilty. Then the அப்போ வந்து ஜூரி சிஸ்டம் இருந்தது. சரிங்களா? ஜூரி was there during 1914. It was abolished only in 1955. It was there in 1914. So what happened was, in the case நடத்தும் பொழுது the prosecutionக்கு a very leading appear Mr. SP Sinha, later Lord Sinha appear ஆறாரு. அப்புறம் for the prosecution BC Mitter, later Right Honorable Sir BC Mitter PC, அவரும் அப்பியர் ஆறாரு. இந்த கேஸ்ல வந்து டிஃபென்ஸுக்கு, அதாவது இந்த பையன் நிர்மல் காந்த ராய்க்கு ஏர்ட்லி நார்டன் அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு மிகப்பெரிய சிறந்த ஒரு வழக்கறிஞர் who had a phenomenal practice in the Madras High Court appears for Nirmal Kanta Roy. So அந்த கேஸ் வந்து இட் இஸ் கால்ட் நார்டன் வந்து அப்பியர் ஆகி அந்த போலீஸுக்கு என்ன மரியாதை சொல்லணுமோ அந்த மரியாதையெல்லாம் அவர் தராரு. இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு மிகச்சிறந்த ஒரு போலீஸ் ஆஃபீஸர் வந்து போயிடுறாரு. அண்ட் இந்த மாதிரி நடக்கிறதெல்லாம் வந்து ரொம்ப நமக்கு ஒரு பெரிய ஒரு வருத்தத்தை தெரிவிக்கிறதுன்னு சொல்லி he makes a opening statement to the court. இன்னொன்னு என்ன சொல்றாருன்னா, இந்த கேஸை பொறுத்த மட்டும் தி டெத் ஆஃப் தி இன்ஸ்பெக்டர் இஸ் நாட் டினைட். அண்ட் அவருடைய ஒரு சாவு வந்து இட் இஸ் அ வெரி ரிக்ரெட்டபிள் திங் அப்படின்னு சொல்லி ஒரு ஓப்பனிங் ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட் ஒன்று கொடுக்குறாரு அவர். he starts with a very opening statement so that அந்த ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட்ல வந்து ஜட்ஜஸ் எல்லாம் வந்து they feel that he is very sorry for what has happened. அது வந்து most important thing. See, when you are doing a murder case, it is better if the defense also starts their opening sentence with a feeling of a sadness for the deceased. It need not be அதுதான் advocacy. That is called advocacy. அப்புறம் என்ன பண்றாரு அவரு, he starts the opening statements. அப்புறம் இந்த மாதிரி போலீஸுகள் சாவுக்கு பல பேர் காரணம், அதனால அதுக்கெல்லாம் வருத்தம் தெரிவிக்கிறாரு. தெரிவிச்சு என்ன சொல்றாருன்னா, ஒரு டவுட்டை கிரியேட் பண்றாரு. இந்த ப்ராசிக்யூஷன் விட்னஸ் வந்து ஒரு இந்த விட்னஸஸ் எல்லாம் வந்து அவனை சரியா பார்க்கல. the identity of the person is different. நிர்மல் காந்தராய் was not the person who shot the inspector அப்படின்னு சொல்லி ஒரு கேஸ் he builds a case. அதுல என்ன ஆகுதுன்னா, the jury, அப்போ ஜூரி இருக்கும் ஜட்ஜும் இருக்கும். the jury என்ன சொல்றாங்க, யுனானிமஸா, அப்போ வந்து 9 members, ஜூரியில வந்து 9 members. இந்த ஜூரி என்ன சொல்றாங்க, he is not guilty of the charges of the murder of Ghosh and Anantha அப்படின்னு சொல்லிடுறாங்க. பட் அந்த அதர் கவுண்ட்ஸ், இப்ப 4 கவுண்ட், இப்ப 5 கவுண்ட் சொன்னேன் பாத்தீங்களா, அந்த 4 கவுண்ட்ல வந்து there was a slight difference in the jury between the jury members. 5:4 out of 9 members, 5 agreed with him and 4 disagreed with the decision of the jury. அதனால என்ன ஆகுதுன்னா, மெஜாரிட்டி வந்து 6 பேர் இருக்கணும். ஸோ மெஜாரிட்டி 6 பேர் இல்லாதனால ஜட்ஜ் என்ன சொல்றாரு, ஒரு ஃப்ரெஷ் ட்ரையல் நடத்தணும். இதை அந்த அதர் 4 கவுண்ட்ஸுக்கு the trial should go on அப்படின்னு சொல்லி உத்தரவாதம் போடுறாரு அவர். என்ன கவுண்ட்ஸ்ல ஃப்ரெஷ் ட்ரையல் நடத்தணும்னு சொன்னாருன்னா, on the counts of abetment of murder of Ghosh and culpable homicide not amounting to murder of Anantha அப்படிங்கிற கவுண்ட்ஸ்ல ஃப்ரெஷ் ட்ரையல் வேணுங்கிறார். லேட்டர் மார்ச் 1914ல தி செகண்ட் ட்ரையல் ஆஃப் ராய் பிகின்ஸ் பிஃபோர் எ ஃப்ரெஷ் ஜூரி. அந்த ஜூரி டிஸ்பேண்ட் ஆகி ஃப்ரெஷ் ஜூரி முன்னாடி it was conducted. Then what happens is, நார்டன் வந்து ஓப்பனிங் ஸ்பீச் கொடுக்குறாரு பிஃபோர் த நியூ ஜூரி, வேர் he says, இது அப்படியே நான் படிக்கிறேன், அவர் என்ன எழுதியிருக்கு, I mean I got this judgment from his book called My Reminiscences ன்னு சொல்லி, it was written by V.N. Srinivasa Rao, who wrote the reminiscences of Edley Norton in 1917. who wrote the reminiscences of Edley Norton in 1917. அதுல என்ன அவர் சொல்றாருன்னா, when he made the opening statement, he said, so while we may admit that the murder of the inspector is an undeniable fact, I only wish today to ask to see whether this man, that is Nirmal Kanta Roy, is the man who assisted and was present at the time when the inspector was shot. If he is not, you will give him your acquittal. If you think he was, you may hang him if you like. But I will stake my fortune upon the fact that I will satisfy the court as clearly as any one man can satisfy another man that the evidence is such that you cannot place the slightest reliance upon it, that the story that he assisted in the murder of the inspector is false from the beginning, is false right through, and is false right up to the end. அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரி ஒரு ஓப்பனிங் ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட் அடிக்கிறாரு. This really impressed the judge. The judge was none other than Justice Stephens. அவர் என்ன சொல்றாருன்னா, what he says is, yes, now you can argue the case and prove that he is not guilty. So the trial goes on. அதுல வந்து Sinha, who is the prosecutor, was addressing the jury on behalf of the crown. அந்த சமயத்துல என்ன பண்றாங்க, Roy, that is the accused, came to the court in a mourning dress on account of the death of his father and appeared to be dejected. This is the demeanor of the witness. இப்போ ஒரு ட்ரையல் நடக்கும்போது what is the demeanor of the witnessங்கிறத கிளியரா பார்க்கணும். அவன் அன்னைக்கு one of the daysல வந்து he, because of the death of his father, he comes in a mourning dress. சரிங்களா? So then Norton successfully cast a doubt on the identification evidence. He asked the jury if they believed that Roy was the lad who was running through the various streets. The jury returned a verdict of not guilty by a majority of 7-2. இதுலயும் not guilty ன்னு சொல்லி the new jury which was formed 7-2, that is 7 in favor of acquittal and 2 against acquittal. So he was adjudged not guilty, but the judge disagreed and ordered a fresh trial again. இது மூணாவது trial, same case. So what happened was, Roy was detained in custody, and when he was produced in court on 8th April, the crown made a submission of nole prosequi. அப்படின்னா we do not want to pursue this case அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரி அவங்க ரிப்போர்ட் எழுதி கொடுத்துட்டாங்க கோர்ட்டுக்கு. And the court ordered the release, Roy's release on that account. Norton asked the court to say that the release amounted to an acquittal. இதுதான் வந்து bone of contention. But the court refused to pass such an order. When Roy was released, he entered the so the two trials and the possibility of the third trial was the extraordinary feature of this case, that such many newspapers like the Tribune, the Amrita Bazar Patrika and the Statesman carried editorials on the topic of trial by jury in India. So this is one of the most important things in this case, because it stood two trials in the same case, rendu trial in the same case, which is unheard of. Nole prosequi is a declaration by the prosecutor to the court that he shall no longer prosecute, implying that the case against the accused is dropped. This is the Latin terminology that is used. இப்போ இந்த next question என்னன்னா, when the accused is let off, இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு ஸ்டேஜ்ல when he is let off the trial because of nole prosequi by the prosecution, whether he is neither discharged nor acquitted, though it virtually has the effect of an acquittal. So this is how the case ended, which is a very landmark case in the annals of history, where two trials were conducted in the same case. So this is one of the things which I would want to bring it to our friends' notice, all who have assembled here, that இந்த மாதிரி சில வினோதமான கேசஸ் கூட நம்ம கோர்ட்ல நடந்திருக்கு. So this is one of the other reasons which probably I would like to highlight on this topic. இன்னொரு கேஸ் வந்தது photographer murder case 1920. இதெல்லாம் உங்களுக்கு பழைய கேசஸ்லாம் ஏன் சொல்றேன்னா, இதுல வந்து உங்களுக்கு ட்ரையல் சம்பந்தப்பட்ட விஷயங்கள் நிறைய இருக்கு. ரெண்டாவது, these are all cases where there are something unique in these cases, very unique. இந்த கேஸ் என்ன ஆச்சுன்னா, இதுலயும் நார்டன் தான் அப்பியர் ஆயிருக்காரு. இது வந்து the trial took place, it's called the photographer murder case, also known as Sulur Subbarao case. இதெல்லாம் murder cases which are very interesting trial. இதெல்லாம் இதுல என்னன்னா, Subbarao, a wealthy Brahmin Mirasadar in Coimbatore and his associates were charged with kidnapping and murdering a photographer named Gurusami Pillai. The fact enna that Subbarao made some improper overtures to the deceased daughter. So Gurusami Pillai enna பண்றாருன்னா he timely அவர் intervene பண்ணி abort பண்ணிட்டார் அந்த மாதிரி plans. So and the next day என்ன ஆச்சுன்னா குருசாமி பிள்ளையை அந்த மிராஸ்தார் வீட்டுக்கு வர சொல்றாங்க. அங்க வந்து he was brutally murdered in a motor car. இதான் கேஸ். The accused were tried in the Coimbatore Sessions Court. அதுல நாட்டன் வந்து appeared for Subbarao, the first accused. The trial occupied the attention of the court for a considerable length of time. கிட்டத்தட்ட ஒரு வருஷம் போச்சு அந்த கேஸ். Subsequently, closing அந்த ஆர்குமெண்ட்டும் போது the Norton என்ன பண்றாரு, he did not sum up the case, but however the assessorsனா இங்க lower courtல jury மாதிரி, high courtல juryன்னு சொல்லுவாங்க, lower courtல பேர் assessors. They found the accused not guilty. The அதுல J.J. Cotton, who later became the judge of the high court, was the sessions judge. He disagreed with the assessors and convicted Subbarao and his 3 associates and sentenced them to be hanged till death. So and the 5th accused was an approver மாறிறாரு, so he was acquitted. The capital punishment ன்னு இருக்கிறதுனால it has to be confirmed by the high court. அந்த காலத்துல வந்து it has to be confirmed by the high court if it is a capital sentence. In the meantime, the convicted people also made an appeal to the high court, and Norton appeared for Subbarao, and after considering the evidence, the bench consisting of Eiling and Justice Hughes reversed the conviction and acquitted all the prisoners. But என்னன்னா, though he was acquitted, Subbarao he died on 9th April 1925. He was murdered in his own garden in Kannamambalayam, 2 miles south of Salem, along with his 2 servants. Only a few days before his death, an attempt was made on his life by someone who threw a stone on his head. It was as if the scales of justice had balanced out. Norton writes in his book, it is as if the scales of justice had balanced out. Even though he got an acquittal in the high court, he was murdered later in 1925. So these are the 2 cases where you see the justice was, providential justice was given to the accused. In both these cases, one, a person was acquitted because he was not identified properly. 2, a person was murdered even though he was acquitted. So these are the 2 cases which probably would ring a bell that there is always a providential justice hanging on the in the courts of in the halls of the high court. So these are the 2 cases which I would like to highlight as far as the cross examination is concerned, or the evidence is concerned. How do you weigh the evidence? Next, another topic which I would like to bring it to your attention is cross examination and the role of courts. This was actually compiled by one of my colleagues, and it's a very interesting reading where you get to know more case laws. But next, the cross examination and the role of courts. I'm just going to give you a review or highlighting certain important case laws and the provisions of the CPC. Initially, cross examination is, I've explained to you what is cross examination. The role is a predominant role that is played in the courts in a trial of which is either in a trial a sessions case or a civil case or or motor accidents case or cross examination of a witness is a major element in trial. You know that, all of you know that, you have read the Evidence Act also, section 136. It goes on till 165. The real test of a trial judge is handling the case during cross examination of a witness. That is the most important thing for a trial judge. The procedure of recording the evidence of the witness in chief in respect of civil cases is also now made easier by the amendment to the Civil Procedure Code in 2002, where the recording of evidence in chief was permitted to be done by way of a proof affidavit. So the long time consumption of civil court was considerably reduced by filing of the proof affidavit. So next the proof affidavit vanda onne, now you have to now cross examine the deponent. So the order of the day will be the evidence of during cross examination is being done in one piecemeal. See, the problem is if enna cross examination nadakkum poludhu, if it is done in several sessions, there is a possibility that there may be the Supreme Court has given the guideline. The more you defer the cross, it becomes more diluted. So that is why you don't give more time during the cross examination, because the relevancy and the admissibility, which I'm going to highlight in the following paragraphs, will have more relevance, because the shorter the period of cross examination, the easier for it to be, the easier for the court and the counsels to ensure that there is continuity and there is also no dilution. So this is why I'm going to highlight this particular aspect of cross examination in this lecture. The major issue which revolves around the practice of piecemeal cross examination is that the repetition of the same questions at the cost of court's time. First, court's time you should not be wasting the court's time, because the more you are taking time on asking the same set of questions, you are wasting the court's time. Hence, the presiding officer of the court shall have to be very vigilant and should be capable of remembering or recollecting the evidence recorded during the previous occasion. The responsibility is equally vested with the deponent and his counsel to alert the court during such instance. So this is very, very important when we are doing the cross examination. While the piecemeal cross examination is one of the reasons for delay in trial, the inability or the ill health of the deponent to retain himself, herself for long hours makes him or her difficult, resulting in pleading adjournments at a particular stage of cross examination, which is again going against the, which probably will be detrimental to the interest of the defense counsel when he is cross examining. Next, in a sessions case, there is no question of pleading, so that the cross examination could be confined to a specific defense. The accused takes the maximum of all the defenses which he thinks is available to him or her. Hence, it becomes a great ordeal for the trial judge while recording the evidence of witness in the sessions of criminal case during cross examination. Which I would like to highlight is that the judge is expected to be very active while recording the evidence. Where the trial was held in the High Court, judges say to ensure that the demeanor of the witness, or whether to test the reliability of the witness, the judges themselves ask questions. That's a provision where the judges ask questions under the Evidence Act, to ensure that they are also actively involved in the examination of the witnesses. By and large, the judge shall be silent spectator, thereby allowing all unwarranted questions to be put to the witness. More often, the questions which is mutually crush the defense of the party are put to the witness. This is how it is being diluted. In short, the real objective of eliciting the truth during cross-examination is totally missed, and the parties are on to a different track or version which they themselves would not expect. Hence, an attempt is made to analyze the importance of cross-examination and the factors affecting the justice delivery system. That's what I want to highlight as far as this topic is concerned. So, the important elements, what is that? First, the contents of the affidavit in chief. The evidence in chief shall be on par with pleadings. It cannot be in the form of arguments or submissions. இதுல வந்து you kindly make a note. Harish Loyalka and another versus Dilip Nivedia and others reported in CDJ 2014 Bombay High Court 789. If I am going a little fast, please tell me. CDJ 2014 Bombay High Court 789. அதுல என்ன சொல்றாங்கன்னா, the provisions of order 18 rule 4 of the CPC require 1908 require that the examination in chief shall be an affidavit, that is brought in the 2002 amendment. This means that affidavit in lieu of the examination in chief can contain and contains only such material as is properly admissible in examination in chief in a manner no different if the witness was in the witness box and his direct evidence is being taken by his advocate. Very, very important. Next என்ன சொல்றாங்கன்னா, an affidavit that contains arguments and submissions is neither an affidavit within the meaning of order 19 rule 3 CPC or an affidavit in lieu of examination in chief within the meaning of order 18 rule 4 CPC. So this is very, very important. Procedural நான் சொல்றேன். So this is what was in the mentioned or highlighted in the above said decision. Then the next one. So if this is the case, how should a court approach such a non-conforming affidavit? That is one that contains materials that are clearly inadmissible or demonstrably irrelevant. A party may be given in a given case may be permitted to replace his affidavit with one that conforms. அதுதான் சொல்லுவார் judge, you file a better affidavit in சொல்லுவார். It is not in every case that a party is required to attest to the correctness of the contents of that affidavit. This was reportedly held by the Supreme Court in Rashiklal Manichand Dariwal versus MSS Food Products, reported in 2012 2 SCC 196. This is very important judgment. So this is the landmark case as far as order 18 rule 4 is concerned. Hence the courts, while recording the evidence in chief by way of affidavit, shall have to afford time to the other party to peruse the averments in chief, enabling to raise his objections at the time of cross-examination. This is how it starts. Then the next one is order 18 rule 1 and 2 of CPC envisages the order of examination of witnesses and the right to begin. The witness can be examined in chief by way of an affidavit and he can be cross-examined. After completion of cross-examination, if there is anything to be asked further, he can be re-examined. But this cannot be done by way of an additional affidavit. It is nowhere contemplated under the CPC. So what we have to do is, suppose you have to add something more, or you have to certain leftover documents are to be marked during re-examination, they cannot be done by an additional affidavit, and instead a slightly improved method, that is recalling of the witness, has to be done to mark certain things which are already which are missed out in the initial examination. But friends, please remember that this recall of witness cannot be made to fill up a gap or to cover a lacuna which was neither pleaded nor proved by any documents. This concept was reiterated by the Honorable Supreme Court in KK Velusamy versus N Palanisamy, wherein it has held, that is 2011 11 SCC 275. Please make a note. 2011 11 SCC 275. இது எதுல வருதுன்னா, order 18 rule 17 of the code enables the court at any stage of a suit to recall any witness who has been examined subject to the law of evidence for the time in force and put such questions to him as it thinks fit. The power to recall any witness under order 18 rule 17 can be exercised by the court either on its own motion or an application filed by any of the parties to the suit requesting the court to exercise the power. power is discretionary and should be used sparingly. This is the guidelines. Next, the said power cannot be used to fill in the lacuna. Kindly make a note. Supreme Court 2009 4 SCC page 410. Vadiraj Nagappa Vannekar versus Sarat Chandra Prabhakar Gogate. 2009 4 SCC page 410. Subsequently, next enna Order 18 Rule 17 is primarily a provision for the court to clarify an issue or a doubt by recalling any witness, either suo motu or at the request of any party, so that the court itself can put questions and elicit answers. Kindly make a note of this. This position was reiterated by the Supreme Court in Ram Rati versus Mange Ram. That is CDJ 2016 SC 216. Next என்னன்னா முக்காவாசி இப்ப நம்ம கிராஸ் எக்ஸாமினேஷன்ல அதான் சொன்னேன், it has to be a cross examination and not a cross examination. So you should not be harassing a witness. There is no hard and fast rule in respect of the mode of putting the questions to the witness in a sessions case or in a trial case, any trial case. However, it has to be ascertained that the cross examination is done not to satisfy the accused to the extent of harassing the witness. The judges need to play a very proactive role while recording cross examination of a witness. A landmark judgment of the Honorable Division Bench of the Madras High Court, Sampath Kumar and others, was stayed by Periyanayakambalayam PS, reported in CDJ 2017 Madras High Court 154. It's a very important case where the courts have held that it should not be a methodology used to harass the witness in a cross examination. This particular case law gives a lot of scope for, where they explain that why a witness should not be harassed. நீங்க வாயில வந்ததெல்லாம் கேட்க முடியாது. It should not be personal. You should give the dignity should be given to the witness. The next point which I would like to highlight is non-deviation from the scope of defense. Very important. It should not result in a grave injustice to the accused, who, despite being innocent, shall be liable for convictions made because of lack of legal knowledge on the part of the advocate. In a typical way, if it is to be explained, the lawyers appearing in the sessions cases or in the trial cases or in the civil or criminal, whatever it is, shall have to decide their defense clearly and have to make a homework on the cross examination. இப்போ என்ன ஆகுதுன்னா, இப்போ சில கேசஸ் எல்லாம் பாத்தீங்கன்னா, the questions incriminating the accused is put in to the accused who is standing in the witness box. In certain cases, it is seen that the cross examination questions are framed in such a way that they mutually crush the defense of the accused, leaving a strong presumption against the accused. இது மாதிரி சில விஷயங்கள் நடக்கிறதுனால certain guidelines were issued by the High Courts and Supreme Court. So இதுல என்னன்னா, the substance is to put the question and answer form for a better understanding. இப்ப என்னன்னா, இப்ப நீங்க கேள்வியே கேட்டுட்டு இருக்கீங்க, ரெக்கார்டிங் ஆன்சர் பண்றது இல்லை, ஆர் நீங்க ஆன்சர்ஸ் ஆர் being recorded without the questions being recorded. So now a system has come where they put the questions and the answers in the form to ensure that the witness also knows what the questions were asked and what are the answers he had given. And in order to ensure privacy, the case details are also sometimes not mentioned depending on what are the cases. Some in the rape case and the mari cases, the names of the witnesses, the names of the prosecution will not be there. For example, if you take a case under section 376 before the Mahila court, அதுல என்ன சொல்லுவாங்கன்னா, I put it to you that you never had any acquaintance with the accused and that your maternal uncle had a land dispute with the accused, and that in order to wreak a vengeance on the accused, your maternal uncle has instigated you to lodge a false complaint against the accused. And now that you are hereby before this court deposing a false evidence in support of your false complaint அப்படின்னு கேட்கலாம். இந்த மாதிரி கேள்விகள் வரும். ஸோ அதுக்கு அவன் டினைன்னு சொல்லுவான். Then when you are doing the cross examination, therefore thereafter the cross examination on several other aspects ஆரம்பிக்கும் பொழுது, while nearing the end of the cross examination, it is very unfortunate that an incriminating question crushing the above defense if put to the witness. இப்போ வந்து இந்த மாதிரி கேக்குறாங்கன்னு வெச்சுக்கோங்க. The answer is I deny. You are in the habit of riding a bicycle, is it not? No. I put it to you that by virtue of your cycling habit, the doctor has wrongly concluded that you are exposed. I deny. I put it to you that you developed a one-sided love affair on the accused, and the accused was not interested in your proposal. And since the accused possesses vast lands and other properties, in order to have a wealthy groom, you and your family have falsely implicated the accused in this case, and that the accused has not committed any offense. Answer வந்து I stoutly deny. So இந்த மாதிரி வந்து cases questions போடும்போது, the trial, the judge who is hearing this will have to come to the rescue of the accused and say that certain questions cannot be asked. The above mutual crushing of defense would certainly prejudice the accused. How could the accused claim his knowledge on the habits of the victim? And how could he plead one-sided love affair? If he pleads that there was no acquaintance with the accused, is the core issue which has been mishandled. So the counsel has to stick to any one side of the defense only. When this being the circumstance, the trial judge can very well warn the counsel and make him restrict his defense. This is how the trial judge comes into the picture and puts a full stop to certain questions being asked in the cross-examination. So this is one of the examples I have given regarding the questions that need to be asked in cross-examination in certain cases, and where the trial court or the judge can intervene and say that these questions cannot be asked, or he can restrict the counsel from asking such questions, or ask certain or reword those questions. You please ask in a, I won't allow you to ask this question, you can reword and ask அப்படின்னு சொல்லலாம் judge. அது மாதிரி பண்ணலாம். Then in another case, which another topic is the piecemeal cross examination. The piecemeal cross examination na enna, and how does it affect the affect the case? அதை வந்து நம்ம இப்போ வந்து சொல்லிட்டு இருக்கோம். The practice of piecemeal cross examination has been condemned by the Honorable Supreme Court in India in Vinod Kumar versus State of Punjab. Kindly make a note. CDJ 2015 SC page number 11. The piecemeal cross examination பண்ணக்கூடாதுங்கிறத Supreme Court has vehemently condemned. அதுல என்ன சொல்றாங்கன்னா, the strict guidelines are being issued to for the judges to follow on this question. The என்ன பாய்ச்சி இந்த மாதிரி சிச்சுவேஷன்ல என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காங்க, at most for want of time the cross examination could be extended to the next day. The above judgment has been circulated to all the judicial officers across the country. The key portion is in para 41 of the above judgment is extracted here under, which would speak in volumes. அதுல வந்து clean எழுதிருக்காங்க. இந்த para number 41 பாத்தீங்கன்னா, they are very clearly said that the piecemeal conduct of cross examination would have to be condemned. So anala, this is one of the essential things while conducting the cross examination and the role of the court in this aspect. Then the next one will be on substantiating estoppel as far as cross examination is concerned. It is also invariably seen that during trials the witnesses are cross examined at length. The real objective of cross examination is to elicit the truth. It is not a tongue twister or a test of talent for the witness. At times there might be some falsehood apparently evidence from the statement of the witness. This falsehood could be evinced very well when the witness gives an answer to a question at the beginning of the cross examination and contradicts himself at a later part by giving a different answer to the same question. The trial judges should be much more alert in avoiding the repetition of questions. However, when an indirect question resembling of an earlier question is put to the witness, the trial judges might not be able to have much vigil on that respect. So this is, however, when a question is put to the witness and an answer is obtained, when the witness tends to give a different answer at a later point of time during the cross-examination, the counsel should make a safe play by stopping at this point itself. Thus, the evidence gives an inference to the court that the witness has stopped from his previous stand, which could be challenged in the arguments. But unfortunately, having lost sight of this aspect, the witness is asked furthermore in respect of his previous statements, and both his answers are compared, and an attempt is made to make the witness agree that he has not come out with the truth. This is called the eliciting of a fact from a witness, and the subsequent contradictory answer is certainly an estoppel on the part of the witness, and the witness is stopped from making a contradictory answer. The doctrine of estoppel play an important role in deciding the credibility of the witness, but this has to be substantiated only during arguments and not by further cross-examination. Hence, the cross-examination on the point of estoppel in evidence becomes unwarranted totally. This is a very important concept regarding the cross-examination. Then objections raised during cross-examination. If one of the very vital areas, it is one of the very vital areas and it has to be addressed. It could be seen invariably in many of the trials in civil cases that objections to certain questions put to the witness are raised during cross-examination. Equally, it is to be noted that without answering to such objections, the trial is proceeded by mechanically recording that recorded with objection. This is improper. The provisions of Order 18 Rule 11 of the CPC is lost sight during the recording of evidence, and the provisions of Order 18 Rule 11 are extracted. There is you can go through that, where it says, where any question to a witness is objected to by a party or his pleader, and the court allows the same to be put, the judge shall take down the question, the answer, the objection, and name of the person making it, together with the decision of the court thereon. I don't see any of the courts doing this. Hence, it is mandatory on the part of the judges to follow the above provision and to record the reasons in the deposition itself as to the reasons for overruling the objections. This is because when a judge ceases his office either by retirement, transfer, or death, and when the next judge takes up the office, he could have no idea of what happened or what was intended by recording as recorded with objection. This is also an area where miscarriage of justice occurs and where the real sense of objections and the reasons for allowing or disallowing are not recorded. So, Order 18 Rule 11 makes a very important observation as far as the objections are concerned. Next is Order 18 Rule 4.2, the evidence, cross-examination, re-examination of the witness in attendance, whose evidence by affidavit has been furnished to the court, shall be taken either by the court or by the commissioner appointed by the court. Thus, when the provision itself is clear, the procedure of re-examination by affidavits shall not be entertained by the trial courts, and instead the evidence during the re-examination or rebuttal evidence shall have to be taken by the courts directly. Very important, one of the aspects. Next, the most important is the demeanor of witnesses in both civil and criminal laws, which are to be followed. Civil law Code of Civil Procedure, Order 18 Rule 12 CPC remarks on demeanor of witnesses. The court may record such remarks as it thinks material respecting the demeanor of the witness. The demeanor of the witness they do not take it as a very important thing. When a presiding judge or a magistrate, Section 280 of this Criminal Procedure Code also deals with the similar provision. When a presiding judge or magistrate has recorded the evidence of a witness, he shall also record such remarks as he thinks material respecting the demeanor of such witness whilst under examination. Thus, in both civil and criminal cases, when a judge finds that the answers given by the witnesses are evasive and not straightforward, it is his duty to record the evidence of that witness in the form of questions and answers so as to bring on the record sufficient materials for the appellate court to form its opinion. The above observation was held in Amar Singh Bakhtavar Singh versus State. Order 12 of Order 18 CPC provides, that is AR 1954, Punjab and Haryana 282. Order 12 of Rule 12 of Order 18 CPC provides that the court may record such remarks as it thinks material respecting the demeanor of any witness while under examination. An advocate commissioner can also record the demeanor as per the amended CPC, which was held in Salem Advocate Bar Association versus Union of India, which is AIR 2005 Supreme Court 3353. Now, friends, now coming to the concluding aspect of this lecture, you have to the certain factors that needs to be considered by a court to determine a witness's credibility, such as the do's and don'ts are I'm enumerating these things. What are the do's which the court should which should be considered by the court to determine the witness's credibility? First, court shall note the capacity of a witness to perceive, recollect, or communicate. First. 2, shall note the nature of bias or interest of the witness. 3, shall note the prior statements that are consistent or inconsistent with the testimony. Next, shall note the admission of untruthfulness. Must note in the presence of the witness and counsel for both the parties in question and answer form. Very important. Next, shall be recorded at the time of recording evidence itself, under what context and circumstances, and with reference to the type of question posed to him, so that the appellate court, while deciding, appreciating the evidence, could note about it, as it had no opportunity like the trial court to note the demeanor of the witness. Next, in R. Palanisamy was a state by Inspector of Police. It's an unreported judgment. 23rd April 2013 MHC. Palanisamy versus the state by Inspector of Police. அதில் என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காங்கன்னா, it has been held that in the absence of the trial court's recording in the deposition itself about the nature of the demeanor of the witness, if such a comment is made while appreciating the evidence of a witness, it is nothing but an excuse in air. This will not be a judicial way of appreciating the quality of the evidence of the witness. அப்படிங்கிறத clear-ஆ வந்து remark பண்ணியிருக்காங்க. Now coming to the don'ts. What are the don'ts? The courts are not bound to note the demeanor upon demand by the defense. 1. 2. The trial court should not record the impression left on the mind of a judge by a witness, such as appearing uncomfortable, hesitant, nervous, hollow, insincere. இந்த மாதிரி வார்த்தைகளே வரக்கூடாது. Which is very personal remarks by the judge on the demeanor of the witness. This should not be noted. This was highlighted in the case of Kishan Lal Gupta versus Dujodwala Industries and others, reported in ILR 1976 Delhi 442. Why they should not make personal remarks about the demeanor of the witness. Next, the trial judges should not be carried away by emotions. Very important. Next, the trial judges have to ensure the neutrality and shall not evince any interest and prompt questions to the defense. Lastly, confession statement of the accused shall not be marked during the investigating officer's evidence. At most, the admissible portions of confession statement could be marked after the admission of the witnesses to the confessionary theory. So these are the don'ts which normally the trial judges should not do while recording the evidence. Now, friends, coming to the conclusion part of it, I am now going to sum up everything to ensure that the evidence is made very simple and very effective. The examination of witnesses is made simpler because of the proof affidavit. The cross-examination of it is the real test of the trial judge. It is expected from the trial judge to follow the provisions of Section 165 of the Evidence Act, which gives enormous powers to the trial judge so as to keep the proceedings under the control of the court. The trial judge should understand that the noting the demeanor is to assess the truthfulness or believability of a witness's testimonial statement offered in a judicial proceeding to prove or disprove a disputed issue of fact. It is also imperative to point out that the litigant cannot take shelter on his ignorance of law. It would be very much appropriate to quote the legal maxim, ignorantia faciti excusat, ignorantia juris non excusat, which clearly contemplates that ignorance of fact can be excused, but not ignorance of law. So this is a very important aspect, friends. The courts of justice should be cautious in rendering justice to the litigants. Though the judges exercise their discretion based on the facts and circumstances of each and every case, and though they adhere to their own wisdom, it shall also be imperative on the judges to warn the litigants on the consequences of their wrongful approach towards law, which may result in the miscarriage of justice. At the same time, the responsibility of the litigant who approaches the court is also much more. The litigant shall have to be due diligent and shall have a careful approach towards the relief sought by him. The legal maxim, vigilantibus non dormentiabus jura subviant, remains the responsibility of the litigants. The courts of justice require the parties to the litigation shall exercise due diligence and caution. The above maxim means the law would help those who are vigilant and would not help those who sleep over their rights. The duty is cast on all the stakeholders to ensure that there is an instance of miscarriage of justice. Also ensure that the justice delivery system is properly approached. So this is the conclusion of the second session of the subject, nuances of cross-examination.